Have you ever felt like the more you understand, the lonelier you become? That your depth, rather than drawing people in, pushes them away? In this video, we'll unravel a truth few dare to confront. Why the very intelligence that could nurture connection often becomes the reason most women turn away. If you've ever felt misunderstood, not because you're broken, but because you see too clearly, this is for you. To be intelligent is not merely to possess knowledge. It is to see, and to see too clearly is often to suffer. The intelligent man is not merely book smart, nor is he a collector of facts. He is a creature burdened with perception, cursed with the ability to see through appearances, through customs, through the polite fictions that hold most relationships together. While others are content to live in the surface level comfort of routine interactions, the intelligent man cannot help but question, what lies beneath this gesture? What does this silence mean? Why do we do what we do? This awareness is not passive, it gnaws. It dismantles illusions faster than they can be rebuilt. And where illusions die, distance grows. He sees how many conversations are rituals, how many expressions of affection are habits, how many relationships are built on unconscious needs rather than conscious choices. He watches the world engage in rituals of validation and conformity, and he remains apart, not by arrogance, but by clarity. This burden, though uninvited, becomes his most faithful companion. It follows him into love, into friendship, into moments where others lose themselves blissfully. He remains partly detached, observing, measuring, understanding. He does not drown in experiences, he analyzes the water. He sees patterns even in affection. He recognizes manipulation dressed as charm, dependence masquerading as devotion, and because he sees it, he cannot ignore it. That is the curse. Once the veil is lifted, he cannot pretend it is still there. To many women, this clarity becomes a threat, not because he means harm, but because he refuses to conform to the expectations of emotional illusion. He cannot give a woman the fantasy she has rehearsed in her mind since childhood. Not because he lacks emotion, but because he refuses to counterfeit it. He cannot play dumb. He cannot pretend not to notice things. He cannot laugh at the joke he knows carries a hidden bitterness. He cannot say, "I love you," in moments that demand comfort but not truth. He is incapable of this theater. The burden of self-awareness is not only what he carries, it is what he inadvertently hands to others. His very presence demands a higher form of engagement. One cannot merely be around him, one must confront oneself. And that confrontation is unwelcome to many. For most relationships are not built on knowing, but on not knowing, on turning away, forgiving conveniently, pretending purposefully. He cannot do that. And his inability is mistaken for emotional coldness, when in fact, it is moral honesty. Women who long for connection often flee from the man who can truly connect. Because connection, real connection, demands exposure. It demands that she too removes the mask, that she no longer plays coy or fragile or rehearsed, that she stands as she is, unpolished, uncertain and raw. But that kind of vulnerability terrifies. It feels safer to label him as too much, too serious, or unavailable, than to meet him on that uncertain, trembling ground. He is not unknowable. He is unbearably knowable. He does not hide, he reveals. He does not withhold, he reflects. But reflection, when it is clear and unsparing, is rarely welcomed. Most women have been taught to desire men who are emotionally predictable, who reinforce their sense of identity rather than challenge it. The intelligent man does neither. He questions assumptions. He deconstructs roles. He treats her not as a princess nor as a prize, but as a person. And that alone is enough to frighten. For her, the man who sees too clearly disrupts the narrative. He does not fit the tale. He does not woo with cliches. He does not flatter blindly. He may say, "You're beautiful." But it is after watching her think, not just seeing her smile. He may sit in silence, not because he is bored, but because he respects the weight of the moment. This kind of man demands participation in reality, not performance in fantasy. And because of that, she often feels exposed, even if he says nothing at all. It is not uncommon, then, for him to be left behind, not because he was cruel or inadequate, because he could not pretend. Because the space around him demanded presence, demanded depth, demanded mutual awareness. And in a world where most seek distraction, he becomes too real, too unscripted, too awake. She may describe him as intense, as difficult, as emotionally distant. But those are projections, not truths. What she often means is he made her feel too seen, too responsible, too conscious, and that burden, though unspoken, is unbearable to someone who has spent her life perfecting the art of unconscious living. There is a peculiar loneliness that does not arise from the absence of people, but from the absence of resonance. The intelligent man, often rich in thought and inward complexity, is not necessarily alone because he desires solitude, but because his presence repels that which is superficial. His isolation is not chosen in the romantic sense of a hermit rejecting the world. It is a consequence of a mind that cannot unsee what it has seen and a soul that cannot connect with that which refuses to be seen. Depth is not always visible, but its effects are always felt. And when depth is met with surfaces, silence begins to grow between people. What many fail to realize is that emotional and intellectual depth are not always gifts. They are burdens that alter how one experiences reality. The intelligent man does not engage in conversations for the sake of sound. He listens for sincerity, observes unspoken contradictions, and senses emotional dissonance even when words are well crafted. Most people are not prepared for this level of presence. They mistake it for scrutiny. They feel judged, even when he does not intend it. In his silence, they hear disapproval. In his questions, they perceive attack, because depth is not neutral. It invites reflection, and reflection is painful when one has built a life on avoidance. In relationships, this dynamic becomes especially strained. The modern idea of romantic love is built on shared experiences, mutual validation, and emotional availability. Yet for the intelligent man, love is not merely about companionship, it is about congruence. He cannot love what he does not respect. He cannot feel affection for what is merely pleasing on the surface. He seeks a kind of communion that goes beyond compatibility. It requires existential alignment. He wants to feel that he is not simply with someone, but alongside someone on the same inward path. This standard, unspoken but always present, creates an invisible wall, because while many can match charm and conversation, few can mirror soul. The isolation he feels is not a bitterness toward others, but a recognition that most are content with what does not nourish him. He watches people form bonds out of shared trauma, unresolved need, and unspoken desperation for comfort. He sees how relationships are often maintained through mutual distraction rather than mutual discovery. The intelligent man cannot participate in this, not because he is incapable, but because he is unwilling to betray his awareness. To feign enthusiasm for what he knows is hollow would be to insult his own perception, and so, the more he understands, the less he belongs. When he speaks, his words carry weight, but that weight is often mistaken for darkness. Women may say they want someone who can stimulate their mind, challenge their beliefs, and dive into philosophical depth. But in practice, what they often want is someone who touches the surface just enough to feel different, not so much that it disrupts comfort. The intelligent man disrupts, not through force, but through presence. His thoughts are not mere opinions. They are convictions formed in solitude, shaped by inner battles, and tested by time. He does not argue to win. He speaks to unfold, to discover, to reveal. But this, too, isolates him, because most are not trying to discover. They are trying to be affirmed. In romantic settings, his depth becomes both a fascination and a threat. Women may be drawn to his intelligence, only to recoil when it begins to unravel their assumptions. They may admire his insights, but feel overwhelmed when those insights turn inward and question the nature of their own desires. They may interpret his calm as coldness, his philosophical distance as detachment, his refusal to conform as arrogance. But in truth, he is simply trying to remain honest in a world that rewards performance. What the intelligent man needs: true dialogue, existential intimacy, silence that does not demand explanation, is rare. And because it is rare, he often walks the path alone. He may find temporary connections, flashes of recognition, brief alignments with souls who almost understand. But these moments are fleeting. They end when the other retreats into comfort, into fear, into the safety of what is known, and he, left standing at the threshold of deeper understanding, realizes again that few are ready to step beyond the familiar. His isolation deepens when he sees how his depth is misread. He may be called difficult, distant, cold, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable. But these words are shields. used to defend against what he evokes. Because he does not offer ease. He offers truth, and truth, even when gentle, wounds. The intelligent man becomes isolated not because he pushes others away, because others retreat from the pressure of being seen, of being challenged, of being called inward without words. In crowds, he remains unseen. In conversations, half understood. In intimacy, cautiously tolerated. His longing is not for applause, but for resonance. Yet resonance requires depth on both sides, and depth in a world enamored with speed, appearances, and simplicity becomes a curse. Not because it is wrong, because it is rare. There is a certain kind of man who cannot wear the mask, not because he despises others, but because he cannot lie to himself. He has peeled away the layers society gave him, one by one, until what remains is not a polished persona, but an unfiltered essence. While most people slip into roles to belong, to be liked, to be loved, to be safe, the intelligent man often finds himself incapable of such performance. He does not know how to be anything other than what he truly is. And in a world addicted to illusions, this kind of authenticity becomes unsettling. Most relationships begin not with truth, but with theater. From the very first conversation, there is an unspoken script, flirtations that hide fear, compliments that disguise expectations, gestures that seek control. Social masks are the currency of connection. People show not who they are, but who they think they should be in order to be accepted. The intelligent man sees this. He sees how people curate their identities, how they bend their beliefs to fit in, how they tailor their emotions to suit the moment. And he finds himself unable to play along. He is not rebellious by nature. He does not seek to offend or stand out. He simply cannot be false. There is something in him, perhaps integrity, perhaps exhaustion, that refuses to compromise reality for appearance. And this refusal, this quiet rebellion, becomes both his armor and his exile. In a room full of people smiling on cue, his silence is loud. In conversations where small talk serves as camouflage, his directness feels intrusive. Not because he intends to intrude, but because his presence exposes the performance around him. Women often claim to be drawn to authenticity. They speak of wanting a man who is real, who is deep, who doesn't play games. But the truth is, most have been conditioned to love the mask. The mask is predictable, flattering, agreeable. The man without it becomes dangerous, not in the sense of violence, but in the sense of unpredictability. He is not easily manipulated. He does not conform to expectations. He does not follow emotional scripts, and this unpredictability is not thrilling. It is terrifying to those who rely on emotional control to feel safe. When a man removes the social mask, he does not only reveal himself, he invites the other to do the same. And that is where the discomfort begins. Most people are not ready to be seen without their disguise. They fear what they might find beneath their own mask. So when they encounter someone who is unmasked by nature, they recoil. They feel exposed by his presence alone, because he is not reacting to their surface, he is responding to their essence. And essence is far more difficult to manage than appearance. The intelligent man, in his refusal to perform, often appears cold, not because he lacks warmth, but because he does not simulate it. He will not smile if he feels sorrow. He will not compliment to gain favor. He will not say what is expected, only what is true. This integrity is mistaken for aloofness, his self-possession misread as arrogance. In reality, he is simply unwilling to betray himself for connection. He would rather be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion. In love, this becomes even more stark. Most romantic relationships are built on emotional roles: hero and victim, pursuer and pursued, dominant and submissive. These dynamics are unconsciously rehearsed, but the intelligent man disrupts them. He does not dominate because he seeks no control. He does not pursue blindly because he needs alignment, not conquest. He does not surrender because he values selfhood over fusion. His presence demands authenticity, mutual recognition, existential honesty. And this demand is too heavy for many, not because he is unkind, but because he is unyielding in his truth. To be with such a man is to stand naked, emotionally and spiritually. There is no room for the coquettish mask, the helpless faade, or the carefully curated vulnerability. He sees through them. He names them. He asks what lies beneath. And in doing so, he disrupts the safety of pretending. Many women, raised in a world where performance is confused with identity, are not prepared for this kind of attention. They do not want to be analyzed, deconstructed, or seen too clearly. They want to be admired from a distance, not engaged at the level of soul. He cannot idolize. He cannot reduce. He sees wholeness or he sees nothing. And so, even when he loves, he remains apart. Because his love does not flatter, it reveals. It demands presence, mutual seeing, shared courage. His inability to wear the mask is not a choice. It is the consequence of knowing what the mask hides. And once a man knows, he cannot pretend not to know. To be understood, truly and thoroughly, is not the sweet balm most imagine it to be. It is a profound encounter with the self through the mirror of another's perception. For the intelligent man, understanding is not a shallow act of agreement, but a profound recognition of essence, of patterns, of the invisible architecture behind one's behaviors, beliefs, fears, and longings. And while many say they long for this level of intimacy, the truth is that most are unprepared for what it actually demands. To be understood by such a man is to stand without armor, to be seen not merely in parts, but in one's totality. Even the parts carefully hidden from the world, and sometimes from oneself. The intelligent man does not settle for surface narratives. He listens in silences, reads between lines, studies inconsistencies, and senses the emotional tremors beneath polished words. This perception, when turned inward, brings him clarity. When turned outward, it brings others discomfort. Women, especially those conditioned to be admired rather than known, often find this kind of understanding too intense, not because it is cruel, but because it is too real. To be understood by someone who does not seek to possess, flatter, or mold, but simply to know, is a rare and terrifying form of attention. It strips away all performance. Many romantic dynamics are built not on mutual understanding, but on controlled misinterpretation. People want to be seen in the light they choose, through a lens they can manage. They carefully curate how they are perceived. But when the intelligent man enters, he shatters that lens, not deliberately, by his very nature. He does not accept masks. He does not agree for the sake of comfort. He does not offer affirmation for validation's sake. His understanding is not flattery, it is exposure. And exposure is something most have been trained to avoid. The problem is not that he judges. In fact, his understanding is often more compassionate than most would expect. He does not blame others for their fears, their patterns, their contradictions. He understands them. He sees where they come from. He knows how childhood wounds become adult habits, how societal expectations become personal identities, how silence becomes protection. But understanding, even when gentle, can feel invasive, because it does not stop at what is presented. It reaches for what is buried. It resurrects what someone thought they had buried well enough never to face again. In the early stages of attraction, this quality may feel intoxicating. A woman might say, "You see right through me." She might marvel at how effortlessly he grasps what she has never been able to articulate. It feels like connection, like emotional intimacy at its highest form. But as the relationship deepens, that same gaze becomes too much. Not because it changes, because it does not. He continues to see. He continues to understand. And with each layer he gently uncovers, her sense of self-control begins to erode. What began as romance turns into confrontation, not with him, but with herself. He becomes the mirror that cannot be turned off. His presence becomes synonymous with self-awareness. And where most relationships allow for hiding, his does not. There is no room to regress into emotional games, no safe space for passive aggression, no space for manipulation masked as love. He will call it out, not with anger but with clarity. And that, ironically, becomes unbearable for many. Because people do not fear being unloved. They fear being seen and still unloved. They fear that once everything is exposed, the fragility, the fear, the contradiction, the other will walk away. And the intelligent man, in his constant seeing, becomes the thread of that deepest fear. Yet he does not seek perfection. That is another misunderstanding. He does not require flawlessness, he requires truth. He would rather be with someone who trembles in honesty than someone who dances in deception. But this nuance is rarely understood. Many flee, not because he asked too much, but because he asked for what they were not ready to give the unfiltered self. And when he stays calm in the face of emotional storms, it is not because he does not feel, but because he refuses to play a part. He cannot be baited into drama. He will not pretend to be someone else to soothe insecurity. His love, like his mind, remains consistent, and that very consistency is foreign to most. In a world of emotional chaos, the intelligent man becomes a kind of quiet anchor. Anchoring can feel restrictive to those who are used to floating freely on emotional tides. His understanding ties people to their truth, and while some crave it, many are not ready to carry the weight of that responsibility. They prefer misunderstanding, for it allows them to remain hidden. To be misunderstood is safer, it provides a buffer. To be fully understood removes that shield, and suddenly, one must face the fact that their excuses, their patterns, and their chosen roles no longer hold. So, while he offers what so many claim to desire, deep understanding, emotional clarity, the ability to see the soul beneath the body, what he actually delivers is too stark, too honest, too unrelenting. He becomes feared not for what he does, for what he awakens. He becomes lonely not because he is unreachable, but because so few are willing to be reached. And in this strange paradox, the very gift that allows him to understand others becomes the curse that distances them from him. What we've uncovered is not merely a social observation, it is an existential diagnosis. The intelligent man does not frighten because he is aggressive, cruel, or arrogant. He frightens because he is awake in a world that rewards sleep. His mind dissects illusion, his presence demands truth, and his love requires depth. He cannot pretend, cannot flatter, cannot follow the well-trodden paths of comfort without feeling the soul rot that comes from betrayal of the self. And so, though he walks among others, he often walks alone. Women, like all human beings, are shaped by culture, trauma, and the unconscious hunger for belonging. Most have never been taught how to exist without the safety of masks. How to be seen without shrinking. How to be known without fleeing. The intelligent man becomes the unintentional mirror to their unexamined selves. And when a mirror does not flatter, it becomes something to be feared. Perhaps this very dynamic reveals something deeper, that in order to love, to truly love, one must have the courage to be undone. Not by chaos, not by pain, but by presence. And that, maybe, is the real reason why intelligence isolates. Not because it seeks isolation, because it waits for the kind of soul that will not run from the weight of being fully seen and still fully held.